All right, let's jump right into this fascinating explainer of a folktale from 725 AD that perfectly blends mortal craftsmanship with actual divine intervention. You know, we spend so much time looking at the grand, sweeping histories of empires and battles, but honestly, sometimes the absolute best insights come from the quieter, everyday moments that kind of border on the mythical. So today, we are unpacking the story of Joanna's heavenly crust. It's a really incredible tale that celebrates mastery, intense dedication, and just a little bit of magic.
It's a pretty wild question when you stop to think about it, right? How exactly did a teenage baker from 725 AD manage to feed the king of the gods? When we talk about the Viking trading era, our minds almost immediately jump to war, longships, or seeking glory in battle. But we're shifting gears entirely today. We're stepping off the battlefield and right up to the hearth to explore a story of unexpected wonder. It's a story that basically proves true artistry can literally reach the heavens.
Section 1. The Master of the Hearth.
So, picture this. We find ourselves on the fertile outskirts of Birka, where a teenage maiden named Joanna is living a pretty peaceful life with Sven and Anna Axelsson. Their sprawling farmstead sits right on the edge of this long, windswept expanse of the Baltic beach. And Joanna? She was an absolute master of the hearth. When she baked her lingonberry pies in the estate's ancient clay oven, they came out perfectly golden brown, just bubbling with sweet crimson juice. She'd set them on her windowsill to cool off in the sea breeze, and the aroma was so intoxicating that merchants passing by would literally stop dead in their tracks. They'd boldly declare her creations were fit for the high gods themselves, entirely deserving of a spot on the grand banquet tables of Valhalla.
She didn't get that divine flavor by accident, though. She had this meticulous, almost magical, rustic process. First up, she would hike into the dense Swedish woodlands to hand-gather wild lingonberries, making sure they were plump and tart from the summer rain. Once she was back at the farm, she ground wild grain seeds down into a really fine, rustic flour. But here is the real secret. To give her bakes a totally unique signature, she actually kneaded crushed flower petals and sweet golden honey directly into the dough before sliding it all into that clay oven. The level of care and precision at literally every single step elevated her craft into a true art form.
Section 2. The scent reaches Asgard.
Now, what's really interesting is the inciting incident that happened on one exceptionally bright summer afternoon. Joanna decided to pour absolutely all of her focus into a very special batch. She perfectly balanced the tartness of those wild berries and the sweet golden honey with a secret addition, a handful of super fragrant elderflower petals. As the pies baked to perfection, she lined them up by the open window, just like she always did. But this time, the wind caught that sweet, warm steam, and it carried that heavenly aroma incredibly high into the sky, drifting past the clouds and floating straight through the golden shield roof of Valhalla itself.
And this brings us to such a cool contrast. Down in the mortal realm of Midgard, Joanna is just sweeping her humble hearth in Birka, completely oblivious to what she has just set in motion. But meanwhile, high above in the divine realm of Asgard, we have Sigurd the baker. Sigurd is working in the massive, grand kitchens under Valhalla's golden roof. It's a sacred, eternal job to prepare the banquet suites for Odin the Allfather and the fallen warriors. So you have these two totally different bakers, separated by realms, but suddenly connected by a single rogue breeze. The second that breeze from Midgard swept through his kitchen, Sigurd caught the scent of Joanna's elderflower and lingonberry crust. He completely stopped kneading his own dough. He was utterly entranced. I mean, think about it. This is a divine being, and he had never, in all his centuries living in Asgard, smelled anything quite so exquisite. You can almost feel his absolute astonishment. He simply had to know where this smell was coming from.
Section 3. The Valkyrie's Sweet Heist.
So this heavenly heist kicks off and it unfolds with unbelievable speed. We're talking minutes here. Almost immediately after detecting the scent, a completely desperate Sigurd summons Lucinda, the swift-winged Valkyrie. Lucinda is clearly amused by the immortal baker's frantic state, so she agrees to help him out. In mere seconds, she dives silently through the clouds, popping up right outside the Axelsson farmstead like a shadow. She peers through the window, sees Joanna busy sweeping with her back turned, and boom! In the blink of an eye, the Valkyrie grabs the largest, most beautifully crimped pie right off the sill and vanishes back into the sky. The young mortal literally never even knew what happened.
Section 4. A God's Judgment.
Okay, so now the stakes are suddenly sky high. The stolen prize is brought back to the Great Hall of Gladsheim right during the evening feast. Just imagine the tension in that room as Sigurd nervously places the stolen mortal pie onto a magnificent silver platter and presents it to Odin the Allfather. As Odin takes a bite, the entire raucous howl of warriors falls dead silent. The Allfather's single eye widens. The perfect balance of the rustic grain, those tart berries, and the delicate honeyed petals isn't just good, it's an absolute revelation to the king of Asgard.
Odin is thrilled. He instantly summons Sigurd up to the high seat, his voice booming with praise for what he fully assumes is his immortal baker's greatest masterpiece. But here is where we see a very mythological version of imposter syndrome kick in, mixed with just sheer terror. Sigurd knows that deceiving the Allfather is a wildly perilous sin. So trembling in his apron in front of the throne, Sigurd drops to his knees and spills the truth. He admits the pie isn't his creation at all. He confesses it's a stolen prize, lifted right from a young maiden's windowsill down in Birka.
And this brings us to a really heart-stopping moment. Odin's brow furrows. For a heavy, agonizing second, the great hall grows incredibly tense with the looming threat of a god's complete displeasure. The theft, the deception, it's a lot. Is the Allfather going to punish Sigurd and Lucinda for pulling this trick? Will his wrath just fall on them right then and there?
Well, luckily for everyone involved, as Odin looks down at the now empty silver platter, his irritation softens. The sheer excellence of Joanna's craft literally saves the day. Because the meal had brought him such immense, unexpected joy, and because the pie truly was the finest thing he had ever tasted in all his immortal days, Odin declares he will forgive both Sigurd and Lucinda for their stealthy little trick. The artistry was just way too good for him to stay angry about it.
However, Odin doesn't just sweep the whole thing under the rug. His voice echoes through the massive rafters of the Great Hall as he issues a booming proclamation. But a Northman and a god must always pay his debts. He insists, right there on the spot, that the young mortal baker of Birka simply must be justly rewarded for her unparalleled artistry.
Section 5. The Divine Debt Paid.
So back down on the farmstead, poor Joanna is pretty bummed. She assumes a thieving fox or maybe a greedy neighbor completely ruined her hard work. But as she walks up to the window to close the wooden shutters, a sudden gleam catches her eye. Resting perfectly on the wood, exactly where her largest pie used to be, were 3 heavy, glowing golden coins. I mean, this wasn't just pocket change, okay? This was ancient wealth completely beyond her wildest dreams, just sitting right there on her humble windowsill. But here's the really crucial part. A small, extremely fine scroll lay right next to those coins. With trembling fingers, Joanna unrolls the parchment and reads the runes. The note personally thanked her for the most magnificent feast the High Hall had ever known. It praised her immense talent by name, commanded her to accept the gold as a totally just reward, and granted her Odin's eternal blessing. It was even signed with the unmistakable mark of the Allfather himself. This wasn't just a simple payment. This was the ultimate validation of her artistry, coming straight from the king of Asgard. It's just such a great image. Joanna standing there at her window, clutching the parchment to her chest, her heart swelling with overwhelming honor and this profound radiant pride in her craft. Her humble, earthly kitchen had quite literally fed the gods. And the folktale tells us that from that day forward, every single pie Joanna baked tasted just a little bit more magical. This story is just such a beautiful reminder of the incredible value of hard work, deep dedication, and genuine mastery. It completely proves that greatness isn't always something you find out on a battlefield. Sometimes it's just kneaded into dough with a secret handful of elderflowers. So, I want to leave you with this provocative question to chew on. What everyday craft could you elevate to divine mastery with enough focus and care? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating tale with us today. Keep learning, keep mastering your craft, and I'll catch you in our next explainer.